In theory, I love the idea of faith-based investing because I love the idea that whatever your truly held values are, whether they are religiously defined or were defined in some other way, that you should be able to invest your money or put your money behind, investments or activities or businesses or organizations, whatever, that are in alignment with that. I think everyone should have the right to do that.
Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously, where real money aligns your personal values with your investing strategy. Today, we're joined by Kylene Purcell and Ben Vivari, the co-founders of Till Investors, who together are making it easier for people to align their investing with what matters most to them.
Co-authors of Sustainable Investing, an ESG starter kit for everyday investors, they're recognized voices in the ESG and sustainable investing space, helping investors see that money can be both meaningful and profitable. So, Ben, I'd like to start with a question for you. You said that you had an aha moment when you realized your investments didn't align with your values, and in fact, some of them offended you. Can you maybe take us back to that moment of when you realized that? What was going on in your investing space and in your headspace?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to start. So, like most people my age, starting my career, I had a little bit of retirement savings. I paid a lot of attention to how much money I put in there and very little attention to what it was actually investing in. And when I sort of decided one day to sort of, look under the hood a little bit, I found that there were things that I was investing in, whether it was oil or tobacco or, weapons industries, things like that, that I didn't really feel good earning money or generating money out of, right? It was like I was on the wrong team and didn't even really know it. And so that was what really started me down the path of saying, all right, well, is it possible to do this and not feel icky? And increasingly, it is becoming easier and easier to do so.
So I'm curious, I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit. We get some pushback oftentimes that capitalism, by its very nature, especially one so focused on shareholder value a la Milton Friedman, it's impossible to be ESG. It's impossible to have capitalism and corporations not be exploiting something or someone. Is ESG, is sustainability really legitimate in a capitalist system, or at least the one that we're currently living in today?
Oh boy, I tell you that we could talk for about 4 or 5 days on that particular topic. It's certainly something that I think about a lot, right? I own a business as well. And so, I'm talking with people about investing and I own a business. And what does that suggest? What does that imply? So it is something that I think about a lot. It- I don't know that I can convince anybody one way or another on that big picture question. But what I can say is that it may not be possible to do things perfectly. Um, this is not a perfect perfect world, but there are better ways of doing things and worse ways of doing things. And what I try to look for are the type of investment companies that are saying, if I look at all of the business owners, which are the ones that are doing better on labor issues, on treating their customers correctly, on pricing issues, on how they use their money, on sustainability in terms of their energy usage and their waste usage and things of that nature. Which are the ones that are doing better, and what are the measures that we're using to measure that, right? And they look at those questions and then they say, okay, for this quarter or for this year, we're going to use these standards, X, Y, Z. These are the standards that we're looking for. But you know what? At the end of this year, we're going to look at those standards and say, is there better data out there? Are there more questions we can ask? Are there more conversations that we can engage these companies with? Because there are plenty of business owners out there, I feel very confident saying this, that really want to do the right thing, that want to be sustainability minded. And then there are those that aren't. And so you want investment partners, if you're putting your money into a mutual fund, you want partners that can help find the difference between those two categories.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about that word sustainable. I think that every investor who invests in a business, they want that business to be sustainable, right? Nobody invests in a company that they think has an end goal, a timeline when that company is no longer going to be relevant or maybe go insolvent, right? We want that company to continue if we're investing them, but that's maybe just a small piece of this, right? So oftentimes when we look at this type of investing, we look at the word or the acronym ESG. Maybe you can share what ESG is, and especially for this show, we know that there have been a lot of attacks on things that are related to or what appears to be DEI, especially on the LGBT community. How does that fit into this type of investing?
Yeah, there were a lot of letters in that question. So maybe it makes sense to first just say, so ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it became a big key term maybe 3 or 4 years ago. People who had been doing sustainable investing for a long time said, okay, we'll get on the train too and we'll use it. And then it got very political very quickly. And now we're seeing very little, not none, but much less usage of the term ESG. The reason that it got political is that many we have to acknowledge that sustainable investing, when we talk about values-based investing, you just have to name it. Yeah, we're talking about left-leaning values for the most part. We're talking about diversity. We're talking about doing good for the planet, right? We're talking about things that are traditionally left-leaning values that we hear about. And so when people on the right hear about this, they obviously get very upset about it, right? And so, especially in states where they rely on a lot of oil and gas for their economy, right? They say, "Oh, you're boycotting us. Oh, you're boycotting our state. Well, we're going to boycott you." And everybody gets very mad, and there's shots fired all over the place. And there's probably a kernel of truth in some of it too, right? And so, where we are now in the national and state, area is, the states are still trying to figure out how they're going to, do some sort of legal thing about it. Nationally, the discussion is, well, can you use ESG in a retirement plan? Because they argue it's non-fiduciary. And for me personally, it's noise. It's noise. I can invest the way that I want. I know what I like. I am going to pick it, and you guys can go have your fights.
Ben's definitely going to do what he's going to do. That's for sure. I just want to add one thing to what Ben said, which is that when you're talking about ESG, the environmental, social, and governance issues, I feel confident saying that the momentum behind moving toward alternative energy, and looking for different ways to evaluate companies' labor practices and things of that nature, the momentum there is not slowing down. People are talking about it in this political environment. They're not using the ESG label, but it's still happening. Companies see that these are inevitable directions to go. But that's not right now. That's not entirely the case on the DEI front. A lot of companies are really taking away a lot of their diversity programming. And while many of them still say, oh, well, we're still diverse, we're just not putting a lot of voice behind it, or we're not talking about it as much, or we're just calling it something else, I definitely see that there's been a retrenchment in the diversity front. Companies kind of feel like they can get away with that a little bit. So, it's something that I'm paying a little bit more attention to in my everyday purchases and my investments and elsewhere, trying to understand for larger companies, where are they in terms of committing to having a diverse workforce, appealing to a diverse clientele and a diverse customer base, and respecting different communities.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's pause for a minute here. We'll be right back after this quick break. So welcome back to Living Not So Fabulously. We're back talking with Kyle Lane Purcell and Ben Vivari, founders of Till Investors and ESG investing experts. So you were just talking a little bit about both of you, I think. Ben, you were talking about kind of this push back and forth at the state and federal level against ESG investing. And Kyle Lane, you were talking about how some companies are pulling back from this ability to have a diverse workforce or be forward thinking or show displaying when it comes to their diversity efforts. I'm a little curious. We know that there are organizations out there that are running full force into faith-based investing, which faith-based investing is also values-based investing, right? How do you see these two being the same or in contradiction with each other, especially in light of organizations like Kingdom Advisors and fund companies like I think it's
Timothy Foundation,
Timothy Foundation,
Barnabas Fund.
these organizations that are on the right-hand side pushing for what many of us would call value-based investing being okay, but on the left, it not being okay.
In theory, I love the idea of faith-based investing because I love the idea that whatever your truly held values are, whether they are religiously defined or were defined in some other way, that you should be able to invest your money or put your money behind, investments or activities or businesses or organizations, whatever, that are in alignment with that. I think everyone should have the right to do that. So, and I would be happy to sit down with any group of people and talk to them about how they could do that or what steps that they could take to evaluate whether they're doing that the way that they want to. If you zoom out though, and at the bigger picture level, there are organizations in the faith-based environment that are that were very much set up and funded to be in opposition to ESG-oriented movements, right? So it's another area where a lot of discernment is needed because there are really honest actors out there, and then there are not so honest actors, and it can be hard to tell the difference up front. Um, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, the very first or earliest sustainable investors were religious-led investors back in the 40s and 50s. That's where we really first started to see people who were investing not solely looking at the balance sheet, but also looking at, what the companies were doing out in the world. And, I think, everybody's got a right to invest in any way that they choose. It just means that you as an investor need to look under the hood a little bit, need to ask a couple questions of the funds you're looking at to make sure that you know that this is really aligned with what you're doing.
So I want to follow up to that because I'm just thinking about the everyday person, maybe not necessarily the everyday investor. I mean, one of the most striking phone calls we would get on a too regular basis back in the days when we were on the customer service lines at our various brokerage firms was you'd get a phone call from somebody who's in their 60s or 70s, and they're like, "How is my retirement plan performing?" And it's been sitting in cash for decades, and it's never been invested. I think the everyday person just doesn't necessarily know what to do, or there's an aversion to it because it seems hard or scary or whatnot. So how is that person, what's a way for that person to be able to look under the hood to make sure that however their investments are invested, if they're invested at all, align with what matters most to them, whether it is religious based or it's ESG or more left-leaning based? Ben, I'll go to you.
Sure. So the first place to start is, where is your money? Right? Where is it? Who has it? What are they doing with it? Right? Those are the basics that you should know. Right? And then from there, you go down a level, right? Once you figure out who has your money, you say, okay, well, how is it invested? And they'll say, well, it's in a target date fund that's, going through here, or we invested in these three funds there. And you ask the question, okay, well, what's in those funds? Well, what are those funds like? Right? It's so much about just being willing to ask and being curious and being interested. There's, the investment industry does a really great job of making themselves sound really complex and really hoity-toity and really don't even ask us because we're so smart that we will just blow your minds and you won't be able to understand. I've been in the investment industry for a while. I can quietly tell you that that's not true. All right. Ask the questions until you understand. And if you don't understand, that's not on you. It's on them to explain better. Right. And if you don't like what you hear, be willing to go somewhere else. Right. You would do it in any other business that you work with. Why not do it with your investments?
Absolutely.
You know,
I hope you just didn't call me
I-
stupid. Kylene, sorry.
no problem. In the case of like a faith-based investor specifically, if you're a member of a church, you can go to the people who run your church and ask them to talk to their finance committee. Every church has one. If you're a member of a company and you're talking about your 401k, go to your HR person and ask them, can I ask you some questions about what we're investing in and what's involved there? Those are really, I mean, obviously you can do research yourself. You can go online, you can look up the companies, you can look up the funds. There are a lot of great resources online that can help you understand it if you're prepared to sit and read and do all that. But for I think the average person, like they're working with, they're coming to investing through some other organization. And there are people in that organization that do know about this stuff, and they may not always be really proactive about communicating what they know. So, just go and ask a question to people who know. And if they don't have good answers, then there's somebody who does.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you. So you started Till Investors. Was that the part of the impetus, is you wanted to be able to answer those kinds of questions for clients, for people who truly were seeking something that was aligned with their values?
100%.
Yeah.
And we really felt that there needed to be a voice out there that was educating people and not selling to them, right? You can get lots of good in ESG language and sustainability language from all the different mutual fund providers and all the different asset managers, but you're being sold to, and it's just a different environment. So we wanted to be able to educate people so that they felt that they could go and ask those questions and have a leg to stand on and stand behind themselves.
So I've just got a curiosity here. If someone is maybe not at that point where they're able to work with a financial advisor, maybe they don't have the assets at the level that they would work with an individual financial advisor, how would you suggest that we go about finding ways to invest in our values through what is available to us? Are there any special tools or easier tools that would allow us to align our values in investing?
Do you mean other than purchasing our book? Which would be a great way.
I don't know. Maybe that's the answer.
which I will say is short, right? And very down to earth and gives you all of those options. But the other thing I would say is you don't need a financial advisor, right? You go to any of these big brokerage firms, whether it's a Vanguard, whether it's a Fidelity, whether whoever it is that you go to, Schwab, et cetera, et cetera. Go and search for sustainable funds. Go and search for ESG. Start reading about them, right? And if you don't like what you see there, go to a different one, right? I switched what brokerage firm I was using because I didn't like the options available at the one that I was currently at. So it just takes that motivation to do that thing.
But there is a lot of great free, very accessible information and data specific to sustainability funds that you can get from Morningstar.com, that you can get from the US SIF organization, that's ussif.org, and from As You Sow. So that would be probably the best place to start, because As You Sow has a number of different sites, but one of the best places to start is fossilfreefunds.com. And you can just look up what you have on any of those three sites and get information about them.
Awesome. Great recommendations. I love that. As we close out here, we have one final question for you, maybe sort of in line with what you just shared. What is your best piece of money advice for the LGBTQ plus community? We'll start with Kylene first, please.
So I think my best advice is, and this is a little conceptual. Ben and I always laugh because I'm the big picture person and he's the down to earth one. But mine is pretty conceptual, which is the financial industry seems very intimidating. The way, yeah, just as we were talking about before, and there are a lot of people, quite a lot of people, who feel marginalized and not spoken to by the types of educational materials, by the type of brochures, by the investment education that exists, right? There are absolutely people in whatever space you're most comfortable in. You guys are a perfect example of this, that do understand money and understand that it can, that you, no matter who you are, where you're coming from, you can access it, you can take advantage of good information, and you can save money and put yourself in a healthier financial position for today and for the future. And so don't let other people's ideas that you should feel bad dictate how you deal with your money.
I love that. Perfect. Ben.
So when we last spoke to you, we talked a lot about the Human Rights Campaign and their Corporate Equality Index, where they do really good reporting on how companies are treating LGBTQ individuals and their partners and their families. And in our new political environment, a lot of companies that were previously participating in that survey took the opportunity to no longer participate in that survey. And if you are invested in a regular, plain old, S&P 500 fund, you are investing in those companies that are not standing with you. There should be some cognitive dissonance there. There are funds out there that use data from the Human Rights Campaign and will ding those companies who are not standing with you. I have to imagine it would feel better investing in those kind of funds than just going along with the flow. That would be my advice to you.
Thank you for joining us today, Kyle, Lane, and Ben, and thank you for sharing your expertise and money stories with us. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you see, scan the QR code and follow Yahoo Finance Podcasts for more videos and expert insights, because when you do, you make your money work harder for you. And until next time, stay fabulous.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.